Beg your pardon?
Well, this is a thing that was discovered by the British Museum this year when it was shut for the longest time it's ever been shut in many, many years. That actually the breathing of the 17,000 visitors that they usually get is what keeps the exhibits at the right humidity level.
No way!
So things have started breaking, objects have started cracking and so on. Unfortunately, they have systems in place where they can bring the humidity up. But what they really rely on is humans to actually breathe on these things to keep them alive.
Imagine the words that you speak becoming living beings. The breath that leaves your lips and enters the atmosphere, forming bones and sinews, skin and hair. Living words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
René Magritte declared, "It's not a pipe." And he was right. Artists' lives and livelihoods hinge on looking, seeing, creating, and speaking about their creations. But the artist Paul Nagu talks about the need for a unified art, a regenerated art, by going to other senses other than the visual. He says, the eyes themselves would distance you from the object of your contemplation, but the hands would make you appropriate them.
Hands will make you revere them.
When my kids were little, we used to go to a local art gallery where there was an Anish Kapoor sculpture which was mirrored. They loved it because they could see themselves in it distorted. It used to make them laugh and giggle, and they used to run round and round and round it. And when the museum attendant wasn't around, I used to let them touch it.
We can't breathe.
We write to you about the word of life, which has existed from the very beginning. We have heard it, and we have seen it with our eyes. Yes, we have seen it, and our hands have touched it.
Until my will is one with yours to do and to endure.
I have been thinking and making about breath and hands, how touch and physicality bring life. The British Museum has handling tables so that people can touch history. During the pandemic, objects have deteriorated because there have been no visitors, and they rely on their breath for the right level of humidity. A conservative friend says that the building acts as an envelope keeping the objects. Most of these objects are in the British Museum because of colonisation, which still breathes its whisper down the generation through systemic racism. I have thought about the layers of meaning and perception between us and the divine, and also how we have all been layering up, keeping breath behind masks. How Christ was the Word made flesh, breath, to hands. How the divine became touchable and involved in the nitty-gritty of our lives, including injustices. How we can know the transcendent through the visceral. I have used prints of masks, sign language, conservation enclosure envelopes, and the 5 joyful mysteries to make an installation piece and 5 prints.
Hi. I felt an incredible range of emotions on hearing my stimulus recording. But the ones that endure are freedom, curiosity, and joy. Because of these emotions, I'm allowing myself to play and experiment in different ways. It feels really luxurious to let my creativity flow. It feels right. Secondly, perhaps because of the lack of the visual, I feel my other senses are heightened. And in response, so far, I've created work evoking various elements. Water, streams, rain, the sound of flowing over water, water flowing over stones. Air, a tiny lamb's breath. The song of the wind through the trees. Touch, texture of pebbles, bark, grass. Scents from the earth, traces of other places carried to us on the breeze. And a strong feeling of bonding with others. I really hope this helps you with your creativity. Thank you.
Hi, it's 5:30 a.m. and I'm writing this on my phone. It's Monday and I'm moving house today. Shifting objects and myself from one part of town to another, gathering them together from the corners of my life, still trying to find a resting place for them and myself. The artist before me spoke of memories carried on the wind. She mentioned rain falling through the trees, of the texture of stones, and I remembered a day a few weeks ago when I sat under a tree in the rain as everyone in the park cowered under temporary shelters which barely covered us. Strangers huddled together. "Can I share your tree?" the men asked. I had gone to the park to think, travelling to another part of the city to get some perspective. I'm trying to draw this memory, stitching it into canvas and fabric. I'm wondering from what perspective compositionally one draws a memory. But I'm distracted by all the moving, and my attention is being drawn to other objects, to old furniture, inherited antique dinner sets, glass jars and labels, to matching colour palettes, pink, lilac, green, turquoise, black, mustard yellow, clay blue, grey, off-white. I think I will make something small, a cross-stitched image, a bit like pixels on a computer screen. The artist before me sounded so calm and joyful in her making. I'm still unsure how to find that freedom and play she talked about. I wish I could recreate for you the same piece I heard in her voice note. But still, I hope there is something here which stimulates your imagination.
How do you draw a memory? The last artist asked me, and I suppose it's kind of what I'm asking you. How do we create a resting place for these moments, objects, and ourselves? And who is responsible for preserving them? Is that the responsibility of the museum to house, rather than exhibit, these memories and objects of everyday life of ordinary people? I think for me, it is, but I don't know whether it happens that much. So I suppose that's what I've tried to do. I've collected objects that have a fleetingness to them, that sort of signal a coming and going, perhaps tied to the seasons of spring and summer. And I've tried to create a resting place for these, as the last artist spoke about in her audio to me. I've thought about natural outdoor spaces and how, in a sense, these are becoming our new museums, creating memories and objects that disappear in front of us, this transient nature of nature. And I've tried to preserve it. What I've created so far is some prints that sort of are created by the digital. They preserve and create a resting place for these moments in such detail. And I've taken them and tried to put them back into this sort of physical place within print, creating this fleetingness and this question or tried to answer this question of how do we preserve a memory and how do we draw it, I guess.
I'm short-sighted. I need wearing glasses. But these few years, I like to take it off while I'm walking on the street, in the wood, doing sport, trying to feel what I can't see clearly from different part of my body. I got to ask, how do we draw the memory, preserve and present? Is very difficult for me as a human. I do more recording on video and taking picture because it's getting too much happening for us, and this type of remembering helps. And I do find the nature is the biggest museum. When the season changing, it's like collection changing in the museum or gallery. At the same time, I think recently we do more street exhibition. The protesting is a live rejection on unjusted, and we are crying for change. We need to learn from history. But how do we have restful time?
I decided to start working with the words that I wrote after reading Ken's words. So the first idea that came about was to use collage as a way to inform the creative process, and I decided to use digital photographs that I had archived in my computer since I arrived in Newcastle 15 years ago. Well, no, not 15 years ago, since 2005 until now. So I went through the process of looking into the photographs and making sure that they wouldn't repeat. It became very hard to understand the process I was going through by revising the time, the spaces, the places, the people that had been in my life and the people that are gone or have moved on. And yeah, I just trying to understand what I am and where I sit and how ephemeral time can be and the presence can be, and how can it be recorded and archived and remembered and distorted. And yeah, I hope this is enough for you to develop your own story, history, your own nature, your own distortion, your own memory, your own identity, your own puzzle, your own fragment, your own change, your own feel, your own see, and that it can be preserved somewhere.
Hello, happy bank holiday. So I have been working for the past week, and the things that stood out for me from the audio that I received were particularly the discussion around, or kind of the mention of the idea of ephemerality, because I am a dancer and so I'm working with, or trying to work with movement at the minute, and I think I'm the only one, and it was interesting because ephemerality is something you talk about a lot in terms of dance and performance, because we normally view dance live most of the time, and so it's in the act of sort of constantly disappearing before us. Like, we witness it and then it disappears and it will never happen exactly the same way again. So it's an incredibly ephemeral medium, because it's constantly being created and constantly disappearing, and that's part of this sort of audience experience, and that is the main thing that has been lost during this pandemic, for the majority of performance. And so just questions of kind of something that's such an innate part of the form, like what happens when you record something digitally. I don't have answers to those questions, but just thinking about that, and what does it mean when a medium that's usually sort of lost forever is recorded in a digital way. Sort of what does it become? And then the other thing that really stood out to me was this idea of collaging, which obviously there's sort of material connotations to that, of like how we usually understand or think about collaging. So I've been thinking about what does that look like if you're doing sort of movement and film, and so I've been trying to film a lot of things and sort of splice different things together and think about the process of collaging, but through like a completely different medium. So that is what I've been experimenting with. We're yet to find out if it will be successful, or what does that even mean. But yeah, those are the two main things that I have been working with. And I've also been trying to work a lot outside, and maybe bring in some of that element of, even though you're recording something, so you're kind of making it more permanent than it would usually be. If you're recording in outside spaces, the conditions that you're recording in are that, you're recording them in that sort of way. They'll never be exactly the same again. They'll never be the exact same birds or breeze or sounds, or weather. So yeah, just playing with all of those ideas. I hope that is something helpful to use, and have fun.
Hi there, I hope you've had a lovely sunny weekend. I have finished my artwork for this project in the last few days, and now I'm going to try and give you some ideas, some kind of visual clues for you to try and make a work from. As somebody who is a figurative artist, and my work is very, very straightforward, and not especially conceptual, I was a bit anxious about this project, and I was expecting, in a way, more of a description of an artwork. Instead, I was given some themes or some ideas just to kind of try and figure something out. So I was given ideas about dancing, ephemerality, things like that. And so I've decided to change tact a bit, and I've made quite a playful, almost kind of a bit funny perhaps, artwork from that. So I think I was hugely inspired. My initial kind of, my brain went towards Matisse the Dance, and I've been looking at that. So I think ideas for you to think about are figures in space, a snapshot of movement, colour, collage, and especially now that summer's arrived, being outdoors, the joy of being outdoors in the sun. That's all I'm going to give you. I wasn't given a huge amount more than that, and I think that's the point of this, to see what you do. So I hope that's enough. Good luck, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. All right, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Hi Lucy. Well, this is not my third time trying to record this, but that's fine. I'm much more articulate when I'm candid. But anyway, so for the last artist kind of gave me general concepts and ideas that they've been thinking about and that they'd like translated instead of a description. But I'm just going to freeball it. I'm just going to do things my way. and I'm really, really keen to see how you're going to interpret them. I've been thinking a lot about materiality, tenderness and what that means. My work is kind of like a meditation on abundance and this childlike sense of play and wonder and unknowability and mystery, but at the same time this darkness, this passage of time, which is really like pertinent in my work in general and what I've been making, and this kind of encroaching these encroaching figures, or this encroaching, well, the figures of certain concepts, not like embodied figures as such, but about the way the body embodies space and how certain phenomenologies are different. I've been thinking about delicacy, immediacy, echolalia, and yeah, I'm running out of time.
Hi, since receiving my audio last week, I've been thinking a lot about repetition and loops, whether that's like physical loops or vocal loops, or yeah. So I remember this phrase which has almost become a catchphrase to me from a workshop that I did, and this artist said, repetition is insistence. And so yeah, I've been thinking about having lots of one thing and how that can be quite forceful and something that you can't ignore in the same way as there just being one of it, and like how it accumulates. And then also thinking about when repetition is more contagious and automatic, like yawning, when a kind of physical reaction to each other, and kind of thinking about automatic physical reactions. Recently I keep, when I'm on the phone and I'm saying goodbye, I wave, even though, maybe it's to do with FaceTime actually, but even though they can't see me because it's on the phone, it's kind of this like triggered by saying goodbye, I start waving to nobody, and kind of how that kind of, those two things interact. So yeah, I've been looking at this footage that I've got of an upended ladybird and kind of trying to respond to that as like a movement score, and thinking about how I could mimic it. So recently I've been reading about play and how mimicry is a form of play, and you kind of how you like imitate maybe your parents or adults, or imitate other people as a way of understanding the world. So yeah, I've kind of been thinking about how I could imitate something and take that on, or how I could use like this insect movement to trigger movement or certain ways of moving. But yeah, I think I'm running out of time now.